Welcome to How Can You Be So Obtuse, a podcast by me, Blair Davis. You can listen to my podcast on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts, and many more by simply searching for How Can You Be So Obtuse. You can follow me on Facebook at Obtuse Podcast and on Twitter at Obtuse_podcast. You can contact me by email at obtusepodcast@gmail.com, through Facebook or Twitter. Now let's get into what's pissing me off this week. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the latest installment of the How Can You Be So Obtuse podcast. Blair Davis, your humble host, and let's see what's been pissing me off this week. I'm sure it's the same thing that's been pissing everybody off this week. No sports. God, just kidding. It's George Floyd. It's not George Floyd. It's the bullshit surrounding George Floyd. And I say bullshit because it is bullshit. It is a distraction. It's a smokescreen, and we cannot lose focus from what the end goal is. And the end goal is November. This is a coordinated, in my opinion, it's a coordinated, well-funded, encouraged calamity that is happening. The riots in Philadelphia, the riots in San Diego, the riots in New York, the riots in Portland, the riots in Seattle, the riots everywhere have all, in my opinion, have all been coordinated. It's not a coincidence that everybody looks the same. It's like saying that the black shirts in Italy in the 1920s were a coincidence, or that the brown shirts in 1930s Germany were a coincidence, or the fascists in 1940s Francisco Franco's Spain were a coincidence. All of those people, by the way, who were fought by Republicans. Don't let them distract you. Please don't let them dissuade your focus from what the end goal is. And that is to re-elect Trump in 2020, in November. We have to. Because you see what's happening. You see the breathtaking hypocrisy between the two parties. Now, not every party's perfect. Don't get me wrong. I don't agree with everything that the Republicans stand for. I don't agree with every single conservative view. On the opposite side, I certainly don't agree with hardly any of the liberal views, but we really have to take a look and we really have to focus at what the Democrats are doing, not what the Republicans can do, because we know what the Republicans have done. Even though they've been fought and investigated and stalled the entire way, we have unbelievable achievements that we can look back on for the last 3 years. I'm not going to get into them because they are literally 2, 3, 4 pages long. Maybe I'll do that next week. But the important goal, again, is the vote in November, because we see what the Democrats are doing. And let's start with coronavirus. I mean, we can start with the impeachment bullshit if you want. The Washington Post reported just 3 hours after Trump was elected that the impeachment process was going to begin. And ever since the day he was elected, the Democrats have been trying to pursue a nonviolent political coup and oust a duly elected president. The president that I voted for, the president that you voted for. That's why we have to remain united. That is the reason we have to act in unison, because they are. Make no mistake about it. They're organized. They're coordinated. Look at what everybody's wearing. If that doesn't look like a uniform, I don't know what does. And make no mistake, there are definitely peaceful protesters. I was a peaceful protester just a couple of weeks ago. Before all this shit started, I was participating in coronavirus protests where the cops threatened to arrest us. The cops have arrested parents for going to the park. Cops have arrested people for sitting on the beach. Cops have arrested people for going to church. Cops have arrested people for exercising their civil rights, their constitutional rights. But for some reason, you can riot and go out of control and they do nothing. I'm not the only one who sees this. I know you guys see this also. That's why you have to get the word out. You don't have to become preachers. You don't have to become evangelists preaching the gospel of conservative values and the Republican point of view. But you do have a responsibility to try and keep Trump in office, because if he doesn't remain in office, we are in some serious trouble, in my opinion. I don't think for a second that this is about race. Like I said on my last podcast, I rattled off a bunch of numbers about Baltimore, about Chicago. I have more numbers about Washington, D.C., and Philadelphia, and St. Louis, Missouri, and East St. Louis, Illinois. And the fact of the matter is black lives do not matter. The only time black lives matter is when a white police officer is involved or a white person is involved. Because black people kill other black people at a staggering rate. I told you last weekend that there were something like 40 shootings and 15 people killed in Chicago over a 3-day period. A 3-day period. In St. Louis, Missouri recently, there was somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 shootings with 14 or 15 people killed in a weekend. But apparently black lives don't matter enough for the Democratic leadership in these Democratic-controlled cities, and I'm talking about a Democratic mayor, Democratic governors, Democratic district attorneys. They don't matter enough for them to take action. It is a false narrative. It is a class war, and they're using race to divide us. To me, it's very obvious. I don't know if it's as obvious to you as it is to me, but the government has the poor in their back pocket. There are tons of poor white people. There are tons of poor minorities also. And for some reason, it seems as if the poor minorities are more easily swayed and more easily influenced. And the government has the poor in their back pocket. The poor depended on the government for Section 8 housing, for food stamps, for welfare, for childcare, for WIC, for all of these other government subsidies that they depend on. And who's been promoting these government subsidies for 50 years? Democrats. Who has been in control of the urban decay that has happened in these Democratic cities? Democrats. For 50 years, they've been represented by Democrats. I don't know if you're familiar or not. I don't know if you know your history, but the KKK was founded by Democrats. Jim Crow laws were established by Democrats. The Confederate states of the South were controlled and led by Democrats. Civil rights in the 1960s, school desegregation in the 1950s, they were all fought tooth and nail by Democrats. And don't let them tell you that the parties have switched somehow. The 1986 crime bill that Joe Biden co-sponsored, that has been categorized by scholar after scholar as being one of the worst crime bills that has ever crossed the desk of Congress, that may be responsible for mass incarceration for brown and black people, was co-sponsored by the man running for president, Joe Biden. 1986. Obama and Biden were in the White House for 8 years, and yet race relations got worse. I don't think this is about race at all. In my heart, I believe that this is a class war. It is a war on the middle class. Again, the government has the poor in their back pocket. What can the poor do to rise up against the government? Riots? Okay, big deal. How long do those last before they move in with the National Guard and the military? It is the leftist elites that are promoting and propagating and encouraging these riots. You have actors from Justin Timberlake all the way over to George Clooney, who are promising to bail out these rioters. They are promising and pledging money to bail out criminals, arsonists, murderers. You don't hear word fucking one from any of these elitist, snobbish, rich, leftist celebrities about bailing out small businesses. Not one. And there you have the war on the middle class. There it is being fought from the top down. It is being fought down from Pelosi, who sneaks in funding for the Kennedy Center and funding for illegal immigrants into the stimulus package to save working men and women, who fight tooth and nail, the Democrats do, to open our borders and go easy on illegal immigrants so they can flood into this country and drive down wages. The Democrats who claim to be the friend of the working man, who claim to represent labor unions, and yet in 1996, they signed NAFTA, which sucked manufacturing out of this country for good. Trump is trying to bring it back, but it's 30 years later. Don't let the Democrats lie to you. The Democrats are opposing everything that they are. When the Democrats accuse you of being a racist, they are the racists. When they accuse you of being homophobic, they are the homophobes. This is a war on the middle class because the middle class are the only sector of American society that stand in the way of total socialist revolution. And if you don't believe me, read AOC's quotes. They're phenomenal. They're phenomenal in their ignorance. She's got to be one of the stupidest people in Congress. This is a person who encourages people not to go back to work. Why? Why in the world would you do this? She says it's in the name of safety, but it's not in the name of safety. We know that the coronavirus is not as deadly as they first told us. We know that dozens of states have readjusted their death numbers. We know that the CDC has adjusted its modeling for proposed deaths 3 or 4 times, and they've been off by 10 or 15%. So we know for a fact that they've lied to us. We know for a fact that Republican states that have opened early, Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, have not seen a significant spike in cases, have not seen a significant spike in deaths. The country as a whole is seeing an incredible decrease in deaths, a decrease in cases. Yeah, I know we have almost 2 million cases. I know we have over 100,000 dead, but this is a free society. And along with a free society comes certain risks. We face a certain amount of risks every day when we leave the house. Hit by a bus, struck by lightning, etc., etc. But don't let the Democrats distract you. Do not let them cloud your vision. This is a war on the middle class because we are the only ones standing in the way. The middle class is the class that makes the money. 1%, the top 1% of this country controls an enormous amount of money. The bottom class, the minorities, call it poverty-stricken, call them whatever you will, don't pay taxes. The middle class pay the majority of the taxes. The middle class are the ones who get up and go to work every single day. The middle class are the ones who fight fires, answer police calls, deliver your food, build your homes, pick up your trash, clean your offices, fix your cars. It is the middle class that is the engine of a free society. It is the middle class who owns all the guns. It is the middle class that they have to conquer to make their dream come true. Why do you think they want to take your guns? I don't know if there's a bigger advertisement for the Second Amendment than these riots and the coronavirus and the arbitrary removal of your constitutional rights. The arbitrary decision to lock down an entire country for a disease that we know for a fact isn't as deadly as they claim. I don't know if there's a bigger advertisement in favor of gun ownership rather than gun control. I know if I had a liquor store or if I had an electronics store selling TVs and car stereos, I wouldn't trust the cops to protect it right now. Not in a democratic city. They are telling the cops to stand down. They are telling the protesters that they stand with them when these are very few protesters. There are some peaceful protesters, but there are a ton of agitators mixed in with them. Don't think for a second that Antifa hasn't planned this and hasn't shipped people nationwide. I'm sure you've seen the videos. We've all seen the videos of black people stopping white people in their neighborhoods from throwing bricks, from looting stores, from lighting buildings on fire, because it makes black people look bad. And what does the media do? The media broadcasts and blasts those pictures of black people looting, black people committing crimes, black people lighting fire, and it scares the shit out of the white people. The white people in this country that still make up 65, 68% of the population, I don't buy it for a second. I don't think this is about race anymore than it is about George Floyd. George Floyd was a criminal. What happened to George Floyd was terrible. If it happened the way they say it did. We know the media lies. We've proven it 100 times if we've proven it once. We know the media lies. So until we are able to verify how he died, why he died, when he died, we can't jump to conclusions. We have to keep our heads about us. We can't get caught up in the race baiting. We have to remain focused on November. Because I'll tell you one thing that I've noticed about these rioters. They're all about 30 or under. They're all carrying backpacks and they're all riding skateboards. And they're not going to be at the voting booth in November. They don't have the attention span. They don't have the patience. And watch what happens. Mark my words. Watch what happens. Now, the media and the left and the Democrats will push mail-in votes. Mail-in voting that we know is open to fraud. Paterson, New Jersey, look it up. I've mentioned it before on my podcast. Paterson, New Jersey, right now, right as we speak, is going through voter fraud. Mail-in voter fraud. Look it up. Don't take my word for it. Research it, read it, look it up yourself. They will push and they will promote and they will demand mail-in voting. Mail-in voting that doesn't require an ID. Mail-in voting because the people are scared to leave their homes. Because the Democrats wouldn't stop the rioting. Because the Democrats wouldn't deploy the police and let the police operate as a functioning police force to protect taxpayers. The truth is not in their interest. The truth is not their friend. And believe me, neither are you. If you're a taxpayer, if you're an intelligent person, if you're able to make up your own mind, the Democrats don't want you. The Democrats want sheep. They want people to obey. They want you to shut up and get out of the way. Give me your guns, go smoke pot, and shut the fuck up. We cannot let them take advantage of this situation. They are creating crises. They are creating situations to pit us against each other. I have never in my life taken advantage of a black person. I've never oppressed a black person. I've never prevented a black person from advancing in any way, shape, or form. I don't have that power. I do not suffer from white guilt because I do not suffer from white privilege. They are both made up. They are fantasies designed to rearrange and reorganize American society. This is a majority rule society. And the Democrats are catering to the infinitesimal minority. They pursue the ridiculous. They use words and tactics that are irrefutable. The second you slap somebody as a racist, you can't argue because either you're with the racist or you're against the racist. And that's how ridiculous they make their arguments. We cannot allow them to derail our society. We cannot allow them to fundamentally change the way our democracy works. I'm not trying to be cheesy. I'm not trying to be preachy. I'm an ordinary guy like everyone listening to this podcast. I'm a fucking truck driver. I'm not a political activist. But I have eyes, and I have ears, and I have a brain. And I can see what is happening. I can see that there are more white people in a Black Lives Matter march than there are black people. I can see that these protesters, quote unquote, are throwing frozen water bottles, bottles full of piss, bottles full of concrete at the cops. I can see that these quote unquote protesters are shooting, stabbing, and running over the fucking police. And they want to defund the police? That'll never happen. Of course it won't happen because it's political suicide. Anybody with half a brain knows that defunding the police means you fund chaos, essentially. Who will protect the citizens of the inner city and high crime areas, but the police. Are those areas to become like Thunderdome? Like Mad Max? Are they supposed to operate as some post-apocalyptic society where only the people with illegal guns are able to run the streets and control law and order? Because if the Democrats had it their way, they'd remove all the guns. How is an ordinary citizen supposed to protect himself against a roving band of criminals? Or let's even take that out of context. Let's say a criminal, a person who wants to harm you or your family, who wants to steal your property. How is an ordinary citizen supposed to protect himself if the cops won't show up? If the cops don't exist? Let me tell you something. The cops are the thin blue line between chaos and order. And God bless them. I support every single cop. Of course, except the ones that are dirty and racist. Nobody supports those cops. But I support every single good one. I don't want this to be misconstrued. I don't want the message to be hijacked, because that's what's happening. Just like the coronavirus. Give us 2 weeks, flatten the curve, don't overwhelm the medical system. And then what happened? We see what happened. They put us all on lockdown. They instituted arbitrary and ridiculous rules for our behavior. Now they force us to wear masks. Not me. I fucking refuse. They will do the same thing with this George Floyd situation. They already have. It's not about police brutality anymore. And police brutality morphed into racism. Racism has morphed into race relations in America. And now race relations in America has morphed into total systemic change. The type of system that we have operated under for 200 years. Not me. I fucking repeat, not me. They will not get me on board. I've examined it. I've researched it. I've read about it. Not me. I will support the cops. I will vote red. I will vote Republican. I will vote conservative. I will support conservative candidates. I will support conservative ideology and ideas and practices. I will continue to support the flag and this country, because no country in the history of the world has made more effort to change than this country. More than 750,000 people died in the Civil War. 400,000 died in World War II to fight tyranny and fascism and racism. We've instituted amendments, 13th, 14th, and 15th. The Civil Rights Act of 1964. No country in history has done more with the power that we have and abused it less. Let's not forget that none of us alive is guilty of anything even remotely related to slavery. We had nothing to do with it. It's a crime that's 100 years in our rearview mirror. Don't feel guilty for it. Don't let them convince you to be guilty of your skin color, because that's just as bad as racism. Just remember to resist the temptation to instantly turn this into race, because it's not about race. It's about class. And they're using black people as the tools to divide us. They're using race as a tool to divide this whole country. Don't let it happen.